There are a few things to consider. On the one hand, you have to remember this is a downloadable game, and for a downloadable game, there's a lot to like here. I mean, this has the look of a retail release. It's not some 2D platformer or a puzzler. This is a legitimate 3D fighting game with a distinctly non-digital feel, and that alone's pretty impressive. In fact, Bellator MMA ONSLAUGHT makes a first impression as forceful as a fist to the face. Then you look a little deeper, and you start to see the effect of its limitations. Case in point, the audio is a bit choppy.
Joe Morin! Fighting out of the blue corner, Patricio Pitbull Freely!
And there's no commentary. And there's only 8 fighters. I mean, unless you make CM Punk. Bellator MMA ONSLAUGHT is, at least in theory, an interesting game. This is a fighter based on the MMA organization Bellator. Think UFC, only with less Joe Rogan. You beat the crap out of people with a wicked arsenal of attacks, spilling blood across tournaments, singles, and online matches. Now, the interesting part comes from the game's design approach. Bellator has more in common with a game like Virtua Fighter than its UFC counterparts. This is really an arcade fighter at heart. In fact, the team at Kung Fu Factory likens the game to the MMA equivalent of a game like NFL Blitz. And that approach works just fine. I mean, personally, I actually prefer that to some complicated fighter with more needless complexities than naked chokes. See, that's because the letters N and C, and they have the... Anyway, the problem with Bellator MMA ONSLAUGHT isn't the basic gameplay, it's actually 2 things. 1, the limitations of digital distribution take an obvious toll, and 2, which is related to 1, there's just not enough here. In fact, the game easily gets most of its depth from its character creator. Now, the aesthetic options are limited. Case in point, you can only put tribal tattoos on the arms, which is just unspeakably douchey. But the cool part is that you can customize their entire movesets, and that's awesome. It's just, you'll spend more time making people than fighting them. So, obviously, this is a mixed bag. If you're a serious MMA fan looking for a serious Bellator title, this game's not for you. But if you're cool with locking up with a simpler fighter, Bellator MMA ONSLAUGHT hits you right on the chin. For a downloadable game. Kind of.
KO.